Hello, everyone, and welcome to Uncivil Law. I hope you're having a great day. And for today's video, we're going to do a live reaction to Actual Justice Warrior. He posted this video 9 minutes ago, and it's a 17-minute long video, so you know I haven't watched it because that would be impossible. But he thinks Don Lemon is 100% guilty, and I hope he's right. That would be great. Don Lemon is a smug son of a bitch who deserves everything that's coming to him. So I would really, really like him to be guilty. That would be great. Alas, unfortunately, to date, I have not been convinced of this, despite my wishes to the contrary, because I'd like to do a legal analysis, and despite my desires, it is not obvious that Mr. Lemon is guilty. I am sad. I wish it was not true, but I haven't seen it. I haven't been convinced to date that he's guilty, but maybe Mr. Actual Justice Warrior will convince me. Maybe he will convince me that Mr. Lemon is guilty. He thinks it's 100%. We'll see if he can sell me. This should be interesting. Let's do this thing.
Journalist Don Lemon has been arrested in connection with an anti-ICE protest at a church in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Yeah.
Bill Malusian joins us now with more on this breaking news. Hey, Bill.
Yeah, Charlie, good morning to you. Our colleague David Spunt and I getting this breaking news from multiple law enforcement sources just minutes ago, confirming that former CNN anchor Don Lemon has been arrested by federal agents in Los Angeles just after midnight this morning at a hotel. This obviously all in connection.
Yeah, that's a smug guy who I'd really like to see go to the federal pokey. I don't know if Actual Justice Warrior can make my dreams come true, but we'll see.
With that storming of a church in St. Paul, Minnesota by that group of anti-ICE agitators.
So Don Lemon, aka Don Lemon, has recently been arrested in Los Angeles by federal agents for his role in that raid of a church outside of the city of St. Paul. Now, as you can see right there, these protesters, so-called protesters, decided that they were going to storm this location during a church service in order to shout down and intimidate a pastor who was not even there, because allegedly that pastor was somehow involved with ICE.
Yeah, and it's of course worth noting here that we have to bifurcate this, sadly, into everyone else and Don Lemon and crew, right? So we've got two groups of people. All the other people who went there for the purpose of protesting, and Don Lemon and crew who potentially went there for the purpose of filming it, which is not the same thing. So yeah, in order to join a conspiracy, you have to join for the criminal purpose of the conspiracy, right? You have to, in order to join a criminal conspiracy, you have to join a criminal conspiracy, right? So everyone else joined a conspiracy. They may not, other people may not have necessarily known what they were doing, but they were there to join the confederated purpose. And so, basically everyone eats it because the left hand doesn't have to know what the right hand is doing. That's conspiracies. Don't join conspiracies. I didn't know Bob was going to do that. Sucks to be you. Bob did do that. You're just now you are Bob because you're treated the same. So that sucks, right? But you have to join it, and Lemon may have just observed. We'll see. Okay.
That is correct.
Now, of course, they sold this as a peaceful protest. They would make claims in the mainstream media about how they weren't disrupting and they weren't intimidating anyone, although the videos clearly show that they were.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, they went there for the purpose of disrupting, interfering, preventing people from worshiping, and as to intimidating, they could have easily foreseen that. And yeah, so I think, you can find some people who were intimidated and their behavior they were intending to get everyone's face. So I think you have a prima facie for intimidating for at least some of the people. And then basically you get everyone else who's involved in the conspiracy for free. So that's like 40 people that, if you have a plausible case against. Lemon and crew, we'll see.
Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are your people? Why are you not at Whipple every day fighting for the humanity, standing for our people? Where are you? You drink your coffee, you got your jewelry, you have your nice clothes, but what do you do? What do you do to stand for your Somali and Latino Latino community.
While we already saw arrests and charges of the main organizer, who is this female Black Lives Matter activist, by the way, somebody who is also running a nonprofit scam where she got a massive donation post George Floyd from the company Walmart and was paying herself $200,000 a year in order to run a nonprofit that was giving out like $70,000 a year in terms of grants, you know, the actual work that the organization was supposed to do.
All these comfortable white people who are living lavish, comfortable lives while children are dragged into concentration camps. You're living real life, nice lives with your lattes, doing absolutely nothing for your Latino and Somali brothers and sisters. You come here to a man wearing a suit as a preacher. Did Jesus wear a suit? Did Jesus profit off the words? No. Jesus would die with immigrants. You do not touch me. Touch me again and see what happens.
Hey, you can't.
You are a fake Christian. Why are you not standing with your Somali and Latino communities? Why do I not see you out at Whipple every day protesting this attack on humanity? Where are you? You're sinners. You're pretending to be Christians. But we know you live an easy life, don't you? A very easy life while people are starving.
And this beardo weirdo who was threatening people, getting in their face, disrupting the church service, and basically implying if you came up to him, he was gonna fight you, as if he was not in somebody else's house of worship, intimidating and threatening people. Now, he had already talked about those two individuals in a previous video and how they were absolutely 100% guilty based on the letter of the law, but now things have changed a little bit because Don Lemon was arrested, and Don Lemon, of course, is a former CNN host. He's claiming that he was just acting as a neutral observer, a member of the media documenting this phenomenon, not actually participating in it. And this is why I want to break down what Don Lemon actually did, so you can understand why Don Lemon is technically 100% guilty as charged for the FACE Act, and also
Please, I hope you're right. Sell me.
also why Don Lemon will be deemed to be above the law and not actually face those consequences. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay.
Into Minneapolis a little bit ago and did some reconnaissance on the ground. I'm speaking to an organization there that's gearing up to for resistance and protest. I've been pleasantly surprised to see the community coming together. Diverse community. If you see this, when we first pulled up, we're like, wait a minute, which operation are we at? And as it turns out, because we're like, well, this is kind of MAGA coded, right? So the American flag or whatever.
I don't know what that means.
These are resistance protesters. They're planning an operation.
Well, it probably means white. It's MAGA coded. Someone has an American flag. Oh, Lord. Heaven forbid, right?
Follow them on. I can't tell you exactly what they're doing, but it's called Operation Pull Up. And it's Takima Armstrong, and she has been doing this since George Floyd, Dante Wright, and others, where they surprise people, catch them off guard, and hold them to account. And so that's what we're doing here. And then after we do this operation, you'll see it live and use these operations as surprise operations. Again, can't tell you where they're going.
So if you look at the stream that Don Lemon is in prior to the storming of the church, he is obviously with the people that are about to go there. And there are different moments in that stream, in the broadcast, where Don Lemon ends up turning off the camera in order to not expose the hands of the people that he is embedded with. Now, of course, you could make the argument that people in bed with U.S. military personnel, and they do so under the condition that they won't give away their position and whatnot. But in reality, this looks a lot more like Don Lemon is participating in the planning of this particular event. He's doing it obviously so that he can monetize the reaction for his podcast, because he's trying to get more attention now that he's left his cushy job at CNN. But obviously, this is the guy who is describing this as an event that we are participating in, meaning him and the other people, and it seems like he is involved in the planning stages or the conspiracy behind this particular event. In addition to that, when we jump forward in just a little bit, what we ultimately end up seeing is that these people show up to the church, and at some point in time they start chanting, and by the way, they're chanting ridiculous things, including hands up, don't shoot, which of course is a callback to the Michael Brown hoax. And during that whole fiasco and all that chaos, Don Lemon takes an opportunity to confront the pastor who is trying to get people out of his church.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
It sure is shameful.
But there were
and as I've pointed out before, which I think is just, continuously like the hilarious point. Like one of the ways to try to think about these issues on both sides, incidentally, is just try to flip your fact pattern, as much as you can politically, so you can make sure you're still thinking about this legally the same way, right? So I've tried to do this in a couple different scenarios. So I was like, well, in this situation, how might we flip this politically? Like, how can we keep everything the same legally, but flip everything politically? And it's like, okay, let's imagine it's 2 years ago. Biden is still president. Let's imagine that it's an imam or an assistant imam who also has a day job, is way high up in the ATF, and this imam, assistant imam, has written a formal opinion letter for the ATF that bans some super popular firearm accessory, blah blah blah, whatever, right? And a bunch of gun owners are really pissed because it's just banned some super popular whatever, right? And so they decide to go protest the imam by, on a Friday prayer service, going in there and chanting something, and Tucker Carlson's in tow. It's like, okay, how do we feel about that? Right? That might be the left version about that, right? It's like, how do we feel about do we feel the same way? Probably not, right? If that factual pattern came to be, the people on the left who are totally cool with this, probably not so much okay with that, right? So there's no intellectual consistency, right? So just try to keep everything the same that's critical and flip all the politics on its head so you can see whether or not you think about the same. Yeah, there's no way on God's green earth in that situation, MSNBC, CNN, the Huffington Post, Mary Sue, et al. Say, what, this is totally good. This is totally good. It's okay to interrupt that imam's, service. Totally cool to go into the mosque and disrupt. There's no way they make those videos, right? You know it and I know it. So there's no intellectual consistency. Yeah. So this helps us think about such issues.
I have to take care of my flock.
Listen, we live in there's a constitution and a First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus, because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world, is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a
no
Christian?
one is willing to talk.
Okay.
Now, of course, Don Lemon is going to describe this as him simply reporting the event that he knew about beforehand, worked on the planning with, decided that he was going to join in on. However, I will point out that this also is very similar to some of the journalistic criticism that Chris Hansen received with his famous series To Catch a Predator, because many people noted in the industry that it is over the line of journalistic ethics when you're not reporting the news and you're actually participating in manufacturing the news. And in my opinion, this is exactly what Don Lemon is doing right here. He was involved in this organized event in the planning stages. We saw that. He ended up covering up from his audience where it was going to occur prior to the event so that they wouldn't get busted. And then he waits for the people to participate, and in fact actually says that he has to go in last after them because he doesn't want to be recognized, because he's so famous, so wonderful, and so special, to make sure that their plan can go off without a hitch. And then, even though the goal was to confront the pastor, Don Lemon is one of the first people to get up in the face of the pastor, and multiple.
It's not a valid argument to declare what your opponent would do and then say they're inconsistent. Well, I mean, we can reasonably project, in that scenario, what I mean, we're all reasonably smart people and we can play the what if game. So we can imagine a hypothetical. What would happen if you didn't eat breakfast, but I did have breakfast? Okay, I'm going to need you to imagine in your mind. Okay, when I ask what happens if you didn't eat breakfast, I'm going to need you to try to bring yourself into that mental place for just a second. Not respond with, but I did have breakfast. So let us use our mind parts and try to anticipate how we think that they would respond, and then see if there's any duplicity in that. I know you can do it. I believe in you. It's going to be okay.
parishioners. And by the way, people have pointed this out, that you can actually see through the various still images that you could see people obviously being upset, children crying. Apparently one of the children that was crying was 6 years old. So this was obviously a disgusting act by these activists. But again, according to them, somebody working at this church violated their political religion. Therefore, their freedom of religion needs to be subordinated to them. And
I'm missing the point. Okay, what was the point? Maybe I did miss the point. What was the point? Would you like to rephrase your point if I missed it? We can wait. What was your point? I'm going to wait. You don't think it's reasonable to assign hypotheticals to the other side without giving them an opportunity to respond? Yeah, well, I mean, okay. I mean, I'm just, just making some reasonable projections based on what I know, it seems to me, but okay. Yeah. All right. Well, if Frank Barnes ever tells me what point I missed,
obviously,
maybe
this is ridiculous and this is absurd, but I think it's important for us to look at the FACE Act, because in a previous video we talked about the Klan Act, and obviously this would be a violation of that. But the FACE Act is a much more...
although it is interesting, incidentally, because when people have done academic studies on this kind of issue, right-wing people are better able to predict what left-wing people would do than left-wing people are able to predict what right-wing people would do. So the right wing is better able to predict left-wing behavior than the other way around. So we got that going for us. So I'm just saying.
More recent law that has been used by the Biden DOJ.
If you're just declaring the position your opponent's a straw man, well, no, it's not a straw man. Because a straw man would be replacing their view with a weaker, a straw man would be replacing their argument with a weaker version of their argument. But what I'm trying to do is trying to guess how they would act in a hypothetical. That's not a straw man, because they haven't obviously acted. So I'm not replacing their view. I'm trying to guess what they would do based on what I know about them. So it's not straw man. It's hypothesizing. It is a educated guess. So no. Yeah, it's a thought experiment, not a straw man. And it's like, what if this was true? How do I think that they would react? Here's what I think they would do, given what I know. And so,
in order to go after pro-life protesters. So I think it is important for us to actually examine what's in that law, and of course talk about previous journalists who were prosecuted for covering events while being embedded in said event. Now, the FACE Act is actually called the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances. However, it is clear by the law that it does not only apply to abortion clinics. And we go to point 2. Whoever by force or threat of force or by physical obstruction intentionally injures, intimidates, or interferes with or attempts to injure, intimidate, or interfere with any person exercising or seeking to exercise the First Amendment right to religious freedom at a place of worship shall be subject to the penalties in subsection B and civil remedies provided in subsection C, except that a partner, legal guardian of a minor shall not be subject to any penalties or civil remedies under this section for such activities insofar that they are directed exclusively at a minor. Now look, there is jail for up to...
You didn't say guess or thought experiment. You says we all know how they would react. So you're challenging me on my vernacular. Well, obviously it was a thought experiment by its definition. I was like, imagine it was 2 years ago when all these things happened. Well, obviously none of those things happened 2 years ago. So it must be a thought experiment. And then I said, okay, we all know how they would be hacked. So that's a thought experiment. So you're challenging me that I said we all know how they would act instead of saying what? We all can make a reasonable projection based on you're challenging me on my verbiage. Okay.
6 months, I believe, if it's a first-time offense and it is not actually involving violence, fines up to $10,000. And to understand how broad this law actually is, what you need to get is this case out of Tennessee that was prosecuted by the Biden administration, because everything I said about Section 2 and how it applies to religious institutions also applies to abortion clinics in Section.
Does anyone think I'm really wrong here? Does anyone think, okay, let's, in the hypothetical, it's 2 years ago and it's Biden's in office and the imam and all that thing, Tucker Carlson. Okay, in that hypothetical, do you think it's more likely that MSNBC, CNN, Huffington Post, et al., do you think it's more likely that they say this is a valid political protest and we like political protests and it's good to go into the imam and do all these things? Do you think it's more likely they say the same thing they're saying now? So do you think CNN, MSNBC, Huffington Post, Mary Sue et al., do you think you could take everything they're saying about this church thing? Do you think you could take all those articles and simply change the details, Mad Lib style, and it would be the same article? So they would have, it'd be the same article. You just cross out, the cross church, and you write in, something mosque. You just cross out all the nouns and things and put in the different ones, and so they would write the same article. Do you think that's more likely? Or in the alternative, do you think it's more likely that they would say, this is an abomination to all that's good and true. This is the end of the republic. This is a desecration that is beyond the pale. This is the most obvious white supremacy and white whatever. We live in a country full of terror, and the Biden DOJ needs to bring an absolute swift hammer to this. And I can't believe there haven't already been charges and blah, blah, blah. Do you think it's more likely A or more likely B? I'm saying it's more likely B. That's me. So since they wrote the articles we know they wrote in this situation, and in the hypothetical universe, I believe it's more likely they would have written the opposite articles. Therefore, they're inconsistent. So unless you think they would have written the same articles, they would have been inconsistent in the hypothetical. Okay.
Section 1, and in that particular case, you had a bunch of Christian anti-abortion activists that went to like a shared building, and in the hallway of that shared building, so not actually in the abortion clinic, just near the abortion clinic, they were singing Christian hymns and whatnot.
They said I call them out, but they haven't made those kind of statements. You are killing me. Of course they haven't made the statements because it's a hypothetical. Yes, they didn't write the articles because the situation didn't occur. It's a hypothetical. What if? But I did have breakfast. You guys are killing me.
You know what I heard? I heard no sorry. I'll sing again from glory. I'll give his life on Calvary to save a wretch like me.
And yet they were prosecuted under the FACE Act, even though they were quite literally not blocking the entrance and thus not actually fit.
What was the point I was trying to make from a hypothetical? Okay. I was trying to show that they don't actually believe what they believe for legal reasons. Right? Because if it's a legal analysis, it shouldn't matter. Right? Because the law should be the same either way. So I was trying to show that what they're saying legally isn't valid because they wouldn't be consistent, because it should be the same, but it's not. Uh,
physically preventing people from going in. They were just intimidating enough in order to get those federal prosecutions. And by the way, this was despite the fact that the state of Tennessee in that particular case had actually charged all of those.
I was also trying to demonstrate a broader point of how to think about things in a way to show consistency of your own mind. I was also trying to say this is a good way to think about things so that you can be consistent in your own mind when you try to flip everything to see if you still think the same thing, right? Are you saying something merely because it favors your team, or are you saying something because you're principled regardless of your team? So if you just want to be go team go, then I guess you don't have to have any particular consistency. Anything that makes my team win is good. Even if I have one position today and literally the exact opposite position tomorrow, it doesn't matter as long as go team go. So I suppose that's one dynamic you could have. But if you want to have principled consistency, your team can be wrong. Yeah. So if you want to be principled, your team can be wrong. And so one of the ways you can help be principled is by taking a situation and flipping everything politically and see if you still think the same thing. And then if you do, then you know that you have a principle and you're not just doing it because your side. If the other side did it, it would be equally okay. Like legally. You may not like that they're doing it. You may not like it because, it's effective or whatever, but you wouldn't want it to be illegal. You might not like it because, we get to throw the football, so they get to throw the football too. I dislike the fact that the other team gets to throw the football and, score touchdowns and stuff. I really wish they weren't so good at the game, but we're playing the same game. Right. So I'm trying to teach you how to think a little bit. Okay. Maybe, I don't know, and whatever.
Protesters with trespassing because they were on private property, which of course the state of Minnesota refuses to do in this particular case. So you already had the regular ordinary judicial system addressing that issue, unlike this particular case. And yeah, based on that case, based on what we saw was considered obstruction, was considered intimidation, Don Lemon obviously met that standard. And again, if you don't believe me, just imagine a little bit of a different scenario. Let's say somebody was booted off of Fox News. They left in shame and they decided that they wanted to establish.
Okay, guys, I know you have problems with this, but Actual Justice Warrior is now going to do a hypothetical. He just said, imagine if. Okay, this is a hypothetical. He's doing a hypothetical. So brace yourselves, guys. We'll get through it together, I swear.
Was considered intimidation. Don Lemon obviously met that standard. And again, if you don't believe me, just imagine a little bit of a different scenario. Let's say somebody was booted off of Fox News. They left in shame and they decided that they wanted to establish themselves as a podcaster, but it wasn't going so well. They got fired from Twitter.com like Don Lemon did. So what they decided to do was team up with a right-wing organization that was going to storm a mosque in order to confront an imam for.
Oh my God, he's doing basically the exact same hypothetical I just came up. Imagine they're storming a mosque. Oh my God, Actual Justice Warrior is also doing the hypothetical to see how you would think about it. Oh my God. No, don't do it. The chat doesn't like it.
For political beliefs that they didn't agree with. And in that particular scenario, everything played out exactly as it did right here, including a 6-year-old child that was crying, little Muhammad. You know for a fact that that right-wing journalist wouldn't.
He just said, for a fact, guys. He just said, for a fact. He said, we know it for sure. His verbiage is like my verbiage. That's really bad verbiage, right? We decide that's bad.
not be able to obfuscate the blame for that, and they would end up being prosecuted. By the way, some journalists who were credentialed to be in the Capitol on January 6th were prosecuted for their actions on January 6th, despite the fact that they were saying that they were just there to cover the event as press. In fact, there is a quote from a judge where it says, just because you're a journalist doesn't mean what you did isn't illegal, and that particular journalist ended up getting a suspended sentence of 12 months plus a $2,000 fine. So yeah, by the letter of the law, Don Lemon is definitely guilty. If the political opinions were flipped and Don Lemon was a right-wing journalist, former Fox News host, he would definitely be convicted. If they went into a mosque or even a synagogue or a Hindu temple and did the same exact thing based on political differences.
And now he's asking you to now he's trying to get you to imagine the Hindu temple. Yeah, now he's like, what if it was a Hindu temple? Some of you guys, your brain just exploded. Yeah.
They would obviously be convicted, but I'm here to tell you guys right now out there in the audience, there is a 0% chance that Don Lemon will be convicted on these charges. First and foremost, one of the things that we found out is that the Trump administration actually pursued an arrest warrant against Don Lemon with one of the same judges that granted the warrant against the other two individuals. And guess what? That judge refused. Then the Trump administration actually appealed that to another judge, and that appellate judge also refused.
Now remember, the feds had gone to judges to try to get Don Lemon arrested before. They went to a magistrate judge in Minnesota who didn't sign off on an arrest warrant for him. Then it went to a judge above him. He didn't sign off on an arrest warrant for him. Then it went to an appeals court.
Yeah.
They also decided.
Yeah, this is also true, Travis. This is very, very true. Yeah, if you guys don't like hypotheticals, you probably don't like Supreme Court oral arguments. Because Supreme Court oral arguments and appellate arguments generally are an exercise in hypotheticals. Yeah, basically 70% of the questions are imagine if. Yeah. So yeah, you guys you have a hard time with that one.
Decided not to sign off for an arrest warrant for him. So there was experts who were predicting that perhaps the feds would go to a grand jury. It remains to be seen if that's what happened here.
So it appears that they've gotten a grand jury indictment against Don Lemon in order to secure this. It has not been confirmed so far that that is the route that they've taken. And even though it's clear and obvious that Don Lemon is 100% guilty, I'm telling you right now, there is a 97% chance that Don Lemon will be able to get these charges dismissed prior to his trial. There's also, if that doesn't happen, a near 100% that they won't be able to get a jury from this particular area in order to convict Don Lemon. Again, they're going to use the...
But we're 15 minutes into this and he hasn't convinced me that Don Lemon is guilty. He's just like, they won't be convicted. But he hasn't convinced me that he did any of the acts necessary to be guilty. He kind of blew past that part, unfortunately.
Excuse that he's essentially akin to a war correspondent that was embedded with the people there. He wasn't going to expose them and endanger the mission, but he wasn't an active participant, even though he absolutely was, and he's going to get away with it. And I don't want to lie to you guys out there in the audience and tell you something that's untrue, but this is something that I warned about in my previous video, because all that's going to happen as a result of this is that Don Lemon is going to further play the martyr. Again, he was out doing interviews saying that he wanted to be arrested for this, that he wanted the evil bad orange man to target him just a little bit harder, and now you gave him exactly what you wanted, because guess what? It's D for different. Don Lemon will not face consequences for this, because the left never faces consequences for this kind of stuff. Remember, the Black Lives Matter rioters, they were all let go. Their federal charges were quietly dismissed during the Biden administration, because guess what? If you're a left-wing activist, you are allowed to do whatever you want, commit whatever acts of violence with basically...
But he hasn't actually shown any of those things. He's just saying that. But he hasn't actually tied it to anything that Lemon did. He hasn't shown or described anything that Lemon did that would be indicative of those things. He's just saying, if you're a leftist, you can get away with this behavior. But he hasn't actually demonstrated that Lemon engaged in that behavior. Am I saying I think Don's guilty? No, mostly the opposite. I think Don is not guilty based on my best assessment.
no consequences. By contrast, the January 6 people, even when they were charged with trespassing, they were hunted down around the nation. They were raided repeatedly by the feds, militarized operations. Remember, Roger Stone was also raided by the feds in a very public way that I believe was covered by Don Lemon on CNN. And this is because there are different standards. It's in the same way that if you commit a sex crime as a Muslim in the UK, you're going to get a lighter sentence than the person who points out that yet another Muslim has committed a sex crime in the UK. So yeah, while you're gonna see a bunch of different people give you the legal standard and make a compelling case that Don Lemon is in violation of this law in the same way that the other
I would love to see someone give a compelling legal argument. That would make me very happy. That'd be great.
other activists were in violation of this law, the fact of the matter is you will see no convictions guaranteed in this particular case. It is going to be a victory from Don Lemon, and of course, it's going to shift the focus from the crime that actually occurred, the clear and obvious FACE Act violation, to Don Lemon being a victim and the evil bad orange man going after the free press. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. Hate to break it to you guys, but I gotta be honest. I want to know your
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I read the grand jury indictment as well, and I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing anything that that shows Lemon's intent to join the conspiracy or become an accessory to the conspiracy. And I'm not seeing anything from himself that seems to trigger either the Klan Act or the FACE Act. I'm sad. I wish it wasn't true, but I don't see it right now. Yeah, it's not happening. Yeah, he basically the war correspondent thing is basically the right thing. He went essentially embedded himself. Now he violated state law, especially when he was told to leave, and he didn't leave because the pastor told him to leave. So he violated state law for trespass, and he can be sued for trespass, and so can everyone else in sight. And they can also be sued for negligent infliction of emotional distress and possibly some other things too. So we can sue everyone in sight. There's some state law violations, but for the Federal Klan Act and for the Federal Ku Klux Klan Act, for Lemon, I'm not seeing it. And I'm not seeing the conspiracy. And I'm not seeing the accessory. Yeah, it makes me incredibly sad. I wish it was true, but it's not. Not that I can tell. He didn't do anything. I looked at the tapes, at least parts that people pointed to me, and I can't find it. So I know he was indicted, but yeah, I don't like it. Yeah. So yeah. And someone asked about the journalists who were part of Jan 6. I don't know about their cases specifically, so I don't know what they did or didn't do. But let me ask you this question. Did they go into the Capitol as journalists, even unofficial journalists? Was that their goal, to document? Or did they go in and at some point break out their camera and start filming things? Because that's different, right? So just because you film things doesn't, well, and for that matter, just because you're a journalist doesn't, there are rules, there are lines. And so like, yeah, would I have said that they violated the law with respect to Jan 6? I'd have to look into their cases to see what they did or did not do in addition to filming, right? It's not that filming gets you off the hook, right? It's not like you can be a law violator and film it and stream it and suddenly it's totally free speech. That's not how that works. So like I said in my last video, like if you're going to try to play this game, which I don't recommend, but if you're going to try to play this game, you have to tread real lightly because it's very easily to fuck this up and do something that makes you a criminal. But it's not clear Lemon did anything. So I know it's sad. Yeah, but that's where we're at. Is there any recourse for Alex Paretti's family? No. Yeah, no. There's no recourse for Alex Paretti's family. Yeah, no. That's an easy legal question. Yeah, no. There's no cause of action. That sucks. Yeah, did he go in to be a journalist or be part of it? Based on everything I've seen, based on everything I've heard, he went in to document. He didn't go in to participate. At some point, he decided to interview people, but like even the DOJ in their indictment said that he obstructed people. He didn't. I went to the tape and watched it where they said that he did. He totally didn't, though. He held the door open for people. He didn't prevent anyone from leaving. He interviewed some people, but they voluntarily stayed. They could have very easily left. Yeah, he didn't do anything. I wish, but no, not so much. Why someone would sue for trespass if it's a crime? It's both. It's both a civil tort and a crime. They have different elements. And you can be guilty of trespassing in a civil sense without being guilty in a criminal sense. It's actually, yeah. So that's why, because they're different things. One's a civil tort and one's a crime. They share the same word. They have some slightly different nuances to them. So that would be why. Plus, you get money, and everyone likes money. You can't sue for wrongful death? Not from the feds, you can't. Yeah, you can't sue the feds. You have no cause of action. Yeah, pretty much. Would he have, if he went as a journalist to a bank robbery, would he have the same protection? Yes. Yes, up to and including him being aware of a bank robbery and saying, can I tag along with you guys for the purpose of filming? And the bank robbery crew saying, okay. And he goes in for the purpose of filming. Yes, he would be not guilty of the bank robbery too. It would be the same answer. Correct. So yes. Without more. What if I was in a highly security military base? What? So your scenario is what exactly? A bunch of people are going to break into a military security base, and Don Lemon is tagging along for the ride as they try to breach the walls of a military base? There's a pretty decent chance everyone's getting shot, right? What are we doing over here? And you keep saying it's obvious like it's Daryl Brooks. Yeah, I wish. Yeah. But remember a couple years ago when people were talking about doing a Naruto run on Area 51? Remember that? We're all going to do a Naruto one. They can't get us all. If some journalists had decided to go along with them, assuming it happened, again, this is hypothetical because it didn't happen, but let's pretend. If it had happened and some journalists went along for the purpose of documenting it, they may very well be engaged in First Amendment activity. Also, since they are invading a military base, there's a pretty decent chance of them getting shot. So there's that. So I wouldn't recommend it. Yeah. The journalist also Naruto ran? Yeah, no, I don't think so. Yeah. Were the other people who entered the church charged? At least some of them, yes. And I think other ones could be charged too. Because you got a conspiracy for all those people. So there's about 40 people or so, give or take, you could bring into this thing. Only a couple of them had charged so far. But I think you got 40 people on conspiracy. I'm just not sure you can get Don Lemon and crew. I wish. Yeah. Is there a scenario where protest is allowed inside private property? No. Yeah, private property is private by its nature. The First Amendment protects you against the government. The First Amendment's a protection against the government. So you don't have the right to invade private property for the purpose of First Amendment speech. That doesn't make any sense. Unless, of course, we're doing some company town bullshit. But now we're scraping some obscure case law. So let's just go past that. Yeah, let's not bring the company towns into this. Then I'll just confuse everyone. My hypothetical is some paramilitary terrorist group tried to storm a military base. Can any war journalists say they're documenting to avoid prosecution? Hypothetically, yes. I think this is probably true. Although, to be honest, entering the secure facility itself is illegal. So I'm not sure the First Amendment would get you all the way to the end of the page. So that could be a really interesting fight, because you're entering a secured facility with the signs that says, you know, you can't enter and stuff. And so this is like trespass, and this is some hardcore trespass because it's a military base and you might get shot. But the First Amendment, of course, beats statute. That's the thing, right? So the laws that prevent you from going onto the military base are statutory in their nature. And so the First Amendment beats statute. So hypothetically, you could make the argument. I would not recommend it. There's a pretty good chance you get shot. Also, there's a pretty good chance that you're loose. But maybe. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure I would try, though. This is a bad game to be playing, guys. If they knew the attack would happen, would that nullify? No. No, mere knowledge that the attack would happen is not sufficient, because knowledge of a crime is not illegal. I can know someone's committing a crime, and my knowledge alone does nothing. And your knowledge alone, like if your friend just tells you, hey, I'm going to go, like, I don't know, knock off a liquor store, and you're like, okay, and you don't do anything, you're not guilty of anything. So pure knowledge doesn't get you anywhere, right? And so my knowledge of your intent to break the law doesn't get me guilt. And so if I'm like, can I document it for posterity? That doesn't mean I'm not doing anything illegal, because I'm engaged in First Amendment activity, right? I'm not helping. I'm not facilitating. I didn't agree to help you. I didn't agree to help you in the criminal. I'm not doing anything to assist you. I'm just documenting. So in that hypothetical, it's legal. Yeah. So the FACE Act seems to make First Amendment activities illegal inside a church. No, not itself. No. Well, obviously, it can't possibly. Yeah, the FACE Act can't possibly make First Amendment acts illegal inside of a church. You should be able to know why. I shouldn't have to explain this to you, but I'm giving you a hard time. Why is the journalist's First Amendment right superior to the protesters? Well, the protesters don't have a First Amendment right to protest in the church, right? They have a right to protest on the sidewalk, but not in the church. But Don Lemon is merely documenting it, and that's slightly different. So yeah. Do you have a duty to warn if you know someone's going to unalive someone? Generally speaking, no, unless you're in a protected position. Although Florida, I believe, technically makes everyone liable. But generally speaking, no, you don't have a duty to warn if you're just generally a person and aware someone's going to commit a murder. You don't, generally speaking, have a duty to warn. No. Has the FACE Act ever been used in the context of a church setting? Don't know. Couldn't speak to that. What if they knew the crime and planned the crime, advised people about to commit the crime not to speak about the plan while they're nearby, so that it doesn't go on tape? Yeah, I don't know that's enough. Yeah, because it's like he's not helping them with the plan. He's saying, don't talk about it while I'm nearby so the cameras don't pick it up. And I don't think that's enough either. I am a pretty strong First Amendment guy. I really have very high value of the First Amendment. So I'm willing to take the First Amendment pretty far, because I really believe in the First Amendment. I hope you do too. The First Amendment gets you a long way, as it should. It is the most important right, arguably. So I'm willing to give quite a lot of latitude for First Amendment reasons, because the First Amendment's really important. So yeah. Protesting outside an abortion clinic, depending on exactly what they were doing, exactly what is the nature of that protesting, right? These, like, you have to be more precise. When you say someone was protesting outside an abortion clinic, what exactly is the nature? How did that protesting manifest itself? Like, the details matter, as they do matter here. The details matter, right? So it's like, yeah, you got to know what's going on in order to analyze things. It's like, what exactly did they do or not do, right? You got to look at the whole factual picture. You can argue the Second Amendment's the most important. I said it's debatable, but either way. Why do I think the First Amendment's important? Well, for starters, it's in the Constitution, and I believe the entire Constitution is important. So there's that. I also think it's important because I want to protect me, right? And so this is part of that intellectual consistency thing I mentioned earlier. Remember, I want the First Amendment to protect me. So with the bitter comes the sweet, with the good comes the bad, right? As much First Amendment as I want to apply to me, I have to give to everybody else because everyone else has the same First Amendment right. So since I want a robust First Amendment for me, in the name of intellectual consistency, if nothing else, I have to give the same right to everyone else, because that's how that would work. Everyone's protected by the same First Amendment. To the degree it restricts me, it restricts everyone. To the degree it liberates me, it liberates everyone. That's the game. Everyone gets to throw the ball. That's why. Yeah. Florida, only state to try to license podcasters. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would work in terms of licensing. That seems highly questionable under First Amendment. First Amendment. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one. Well, the protesters got enough, they call themselves journalists. No, it's not that simple. I tried saying this before. It's not that simple. The protesters just can't whip out a phone and start live streaming it to Twitch and suddenly it becomes all okay. I'm not saying anything like that. The First Amendment protects you, but it has limits for sure. But it is what it is. So, I mean, yeah. Is there a precedent for journalist activity being protected or not? It's not that simple. It's not that simple. It's not like, there's not going to be a case that says like journalists can do X but not Y. Well, there might be in some specific situation, but yeah, it's not that simple. It's a question of what the First Amendment protects and what it doesn't. And being a passive observer of the fly on the wall, for lack of better description, is going to be protected. Once you start doing things, maybe less so. Do I think social media companies should be able to ban users if they don't violate the law since social media is now a public square? Well, it's not really a public square in the sense, but that raises a whole sense of questions that, How do I feel about the Third Amendment? I tell you what, man, the Third Amendment is alive and well. I tell you what, the government has not once tried to quarter a soldier in my home. So I appreciate that. I appreciate the government's respect for the Third Amendment. I keep trying to join the Third Amendment Law Society, but for some reason they won't respond to my emails. It makes me sad. I keep trying to join the Third Amendment Law Society. I'm like, I'm available. I could write some briefs or something, but they won't respond to my emails. It's very, very disappointing. I don't know if to write them a FedEx. with some parchment or something. I don't know what I'm supposed to do, but I keep trying to join. Please respond my emails. I'm available. If I could unilaterally pass a constitutional amendment, it would be one of two things. It would either, well, let's see. If I only get one, I would change our voting method from first past the post to something more robust, like, say, single transferable vote. Yeah, that's what I would do. I'd require that all elections in the United States be done by a single transferable vote. Yeah, that's my constitutional amendment. Yeah, I think that's the play. Yeah. Ranked is single transferable vote. It goes by another name. So yeah, ranked choice voting is single transferable vote. It goes by a couple different names. Proportional, no, because proportional would require us to like have multiple different, people per district and stuff like that. So single transferable vote will be fine. Wouldn't urban areas dominate? No, it wouldn't change anything like that. Everyone would have exactly the same voting power they did before. Everyone still gets one vote. It's just a more complicated vote now. Yeah, it would be, everyone has exactly the same voting power they did before. It's just more complicated. Do I think I'm a journalist? Well, I don't really know what you mean by the question, because I don't think the First Amendment gives any special protection to journalists. I think the First Amendment protects everyone equally. So if you're asking me, do I think I'm a journalist, out of the idea that if I was, that the First Amendment would grant me more, then I reject the premise. The First Amendment gives everyone the same. It has to. It's an individual right. It has to give me the same rights as Lemon and versus anyone else. I have the exact same rights, First Amendment rights, that Anderson Cooper does. Or insert your own person of choice in this sentence. So I reject the premise. Rural needs with different needs would get railroaded? No, it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't change that. Single transferable vote would not cause rural people to get railroaded. They would have the exact same voting power they do now. It would be exactly the same. They just have a more complicated vote. But it's still, everyone gets one vote. It's just more complicated. It's a multi-part vote, but it's the same power. By definition, do you think you're a journalist? Again, see, I don't understand the question. You're asking me a question that doesn't make sense. If you're asking me from a First Amendment perspective, I don't think there is such a thing as a journalist. So yeah, it's like, by definition, do you think you're a journalist? If you're asking me from the First Amendment perspective, I don't think there are journalists. I don't agree that there's such a thing. So the question doesn't make any sense. I agree with ranked choice voting, very much so. Yes, I agree with ranked choice voting, very much so. I would think it would lead to much better elections. Veritasium did a different method of voting, how it's virtually impossible to prove. That's not what he said. He pointed out that under something called Arrow's impossibility theorem, it's impossible to create a voting system that can satisfy three conditions at the same time. And like, all three of those conditions are things people want, but you cannot, it's mathematically impossible to create a voting system that can do all of them all at once. It can't be done. But he didn't argue that some voting systems weren't better. He just argued that no voting system can be perfect, because it can't. It's not possible. Yeah. Ranked choice is bogus. See, I don't agree. I think it would lead to I think it would lead to better elections, and it would cause people to have a richer vote. It would cause people to what would happen in practice is it would cause people to feel more free to vote for third party or more fringe candidates because they wouldn't be throwing their vote away. And so we would be able to better see what people really want. It would allow people to more accurately express their preferences instead of having to make compromise choices. Well, they'd have to make compromise choices a little bit, but less compromises. So it would allow for a more robust vote. So the politicians that are elected would be a more accurate representation of people's true feelings. It would be an improvement. It would lead to politicians that are a better representation of people's desires, in my opinion, and also increase the probability of third parties gaining prominence and potentially winning someday. So that's good. Have I spoken about First Amendment time, place, manner restrictions? Not really, but it's because it's not particularly relevant to this analysis because we're not talking about the government, right? The church is not the government. So First Amendment time, place, manner analysis is not really relevant to this discussion, as far as I can tell. No, it wouldn't lead to one state controlling the entire country. It wouldn't. No, absolutely not. Every state would have exactly the same voting power it does now. It wouldn't lead to anything. No, it doesn't change people's votes. It doesn't change the power of people's votes. Under ranked choice voting, everyone would have exactly the same voting power they do now. It doesn't change people's voting power. It would not, nor could it lead to one state ruling the country. No, that's not how any of this works. No. No, it wouldn't. It's not possible. What you're saying doesn't make any sense. I don't know, like Florida, how many electoral votes does it have? 23? Let's say it's 23 for the purpose of this discussion. Florida would still have 23 electoral votes. It had 23 before and it would have 23 now, or 25 or 28 or whatever the number is. It doesn't, no. It rests then on population size? Yes, it does. No. Either you don't know what I'm talking about, or you think I'm talking about something else, or you're just trolling. No, it would not. I do have a political science degree in addition to a computer science degree. I have both. So I studied this. This was like one of my major areas of study in undergrad because I was fascinated by it then. No, it would not. No, absolutely not. Yeah, it would be exact. Everyone would have exactly the same voting power they do now. No one's vote becomes more powerful. No state becomes more powerful. No. No, absolutely not. Yeah, I have a BS in computer science and a BS in computer science, political science and computer science. I graduated May of 2004 with a BS in computer science, and then I graduated August of 2004 with a BS in political science. So nice, I graduated twice with 2 different degrees at 2 different times because I'm just that cool. We could still have the Electoral College. We could still have the Electoral College too. It'd be fine. What college gave you a BS in political science? Clemson University. Go Tigers. It's right there. Clemson. Go Tigers. Yeah. I got a BS in political science and a BS in computer science from Clemson in May and August of 04. Go Tigers. Yeah. Is the reason I decided not to be a tech lawyer. I was for a long time. I did patent law for 15 years. And then I got tired. I don't want to do it anymore. I am a patent lawyer. Yeah. I don't do it anymore though, but yeah. How would electoral votes be awarded in a ranked vote system? The same way they are now. Every state gets so many votes and so forth and so on. Yeah, it's fine. What's the point of the ranked choice voting if winners in the state still get the electoral votes? Because it might change who the winners are. The point is to allow people to more accurately reflect their voting preferences. So while the winner would still get the electoral votes, it might change who the winner is, because it would allow for a more accurate vote. So a person voting for third party doesn't increase the power of their vote? Correct, it doesn't. Do I know what I'm advocating? I'm well aware. Any more than it does now. You can vote for a third party today. Does that mean you have more voting power than someone who votes for one of the major two parties? That doesn't make any sense. If I go vote in the next election and I vote for a third party, do I have more voting power because I voted for the third party? No, that doesn't make sense. What are we talking about? No. Would every state have the exact same ballots? Not necessarily, because you still have to qualify for each state's ballots as you do now. So not necessarily. It's improper to submit a slate of preferences. You have one vote. It is one vote. It's just one vote that's more complex. You're saying I like person A, but if not A, person B, but if not B, person C, but if not C, person D. You still have one vote. You're just saying how to cast that vote with more clarity and more specificity. It's the same vote it was before. It's just more precise. Anyways, I'm not sure that this discussion's getting us anywhere, but all right. Would it mean that someone might not get the majority in electoral college? Yeah, possible. But we already have a solution for that in the Constitution, remember? We've done that before, where no one gets the majority. We've done it a couple times in the past. It's been a while, but we've done it. So we have a solution to this problem. So might it increase the probability no one gets a majority in electoral college? Yeah, it's possible. But, we already have a solution to that problem, so it's going to be fine. It'll be fine. Yeah, no problem. Yeah. Well, in any event, I'm going to sign off. This has been fun. I hope all's well for now. Talk to you later. Cheers for my friends and goodbye. And if we find any way for Don Lemon to be found guilty, if I find a persuasive argument, I'll let you know. I'll keep hoping. Maybe someday.